everybody, it's Dakota, and today I'm going to be bringing you another modern deck tech. This one being one of the decks that gets a lot better with the Oko banning in modern, and that is AmuLIT Titan. This deck list is from Matthew Dilks, who basically always pilots the deck and almost never loses with it. So I'm going to be going over his list because I think he comes up with like the definitive like best list or like the consensus best list to be playing. So that's what we're going to do. So, what is this deck trying to accomplish? There's a lot of different things that you can do with this deck in terms of the lands and things you can get, and the interactions are really interesting and stuff that you really wouldn't think about if you were like a beginning or even like an intermediate type player. So basically, like some of the combinations of lands that you play, since the lands are a little bit more important than the spells, because once you find the right spells you need, aka Primeval Titan and Amulet of Vigor, you can just kind of go off with the deck. So going over the lands first, which I don't normally do, Bajuka Bog is a one of something you can tutor up with another land in this deck that we'll get to here in a minute. Bajuka Bog exiles all cards in a player's graveyard. Just a really good utility land against like the graveyard decks. Boros Garrison, one of our Karoo lands or Ravnica bounce lands, produces both colors of mana at the cost of entering the battlefield tapped and having to return a land you control, which you'll find out very quickly in this deck is more of an upside than a downside. Two breeding pool, Castle Garenbrig, which allows you to play Titans as early as turn 3, which is very, very good in this deck, all things considered. When you can just play Titan on turn 3, tutor up some lands, and just really get your game plan going. Cavern of Souls to make your creature, aka normally Primeval Titan, uncounterable. Field of the Dead to start making a ton of zombies. Like we were saying before, like bouncing lands with like Boros Garrison and some of the other bounce lands that you play ends up being more of an upside than a downside, and Field of the Dead is one of those upsides where you just get to make a ton of zombies. Two basic forest, a gemstone mine, which taps for any color, and when you bounce it with the bounce lands, you essentially reset the counters, so you have a painless land that taps for all 5 colors. Ghost Quarter for those big mana decks. Rot Farm is another bounce land that we play. Gruul Turf, bounce land. Radiant Fountain for burn, any of those decks that are trying to throw burn spells at your face. Sanctuary, Growth Chamber, more bounce lands that you can tutor up that are very good in helping you essentially ramp into Primeval Titans and things like that. Slayer Stronghold to give your Titan haste. One of the combos that are in the deck is when you play an Amulet of Vigor, which untaps a permanent when a permanent enters the battlefield tapped under your control, you untap it. Primeval Titan searches for 2 land cards and puts them into the battlefield tapped, and then you shuffle your library. So essentially, one of your combos with the lands is getting a Slayer Stronghold and Boros Garrison, untapping them, activating the Slayer Stronghold to give the Titan Vigilance and Haste, and then obviously bouncing a land with the Boros Garrison to then attack with the Titan and get 2 more triggers from your Titan when you attack, also getting in for a ton of damage. And depending on your start and everything too, and how much mana you have, you can go get Sunhome and Vesuva. Vesuva copying the Boros Garrison to then give the Titan double strike and be able to 16 your opponent as early as turn 3 with the right setup and everything. Normally you need like double Amulet or just a way to like play multiple lands in a turn, usually with like Azusa or like Sakura Tribe Scout putting in lands as well. Teleria West is an interesting card in the deck for the fact that it has the transmute ability where you can pay its cost and discard it to search your library for a card with converted mana cost 0 and put it to your hand, and then you shuffle your library, and you can only use this ability as a sorcery. So what exactly are the zeros that we can search for in this deck with Teleria West? So with Teleria West, you can get any one of your lands. And so maybe you play a Titan and you're playing against an aggressive deck, and you just want to set up like for more Titans, or with getting certain lands after you search for your Primeval Titan to thin the deck and everything like that. You can do that with like a Simic Growth Chamber and a Teleria West, just to pick them up and then get to transmute Teleria West into one of these lands, whichever one is going to be good for the situation. Getting Radiant Fountain if you're playing against Burn, uh, getting Field of the Dead to kind of get your zombie generation going, Bajuka Bog to just exile your opponent's graveyard, things like that. Also, of worth noting that transmuting Teleria West can also get Pact of Negation, Summoner's Pact, and then Engineered Explosives. Summoner's Pact is basically 4 more Primeval Titans in the deck. Essentially, most of the time when you're casting that card, you're casting it so you can go get a Titan and either basically win the game or actually win the game. Pact of Negation also just protects like your essentially your combo, or protects your like your Titan, where if you just needed to live and you can just pay the pact cost, attack with your Primeval Titan and then get in there for the last points of damage, that's all fine and good. Or just being able to get a Pact of Negation to protect your Titan on the same turn that you're going to win the game, as essentially having a free counterspell because you never have to worry about paying the upkeep cost if you never get to your next upkeep. So basically, I've just went over like the entirety of the deck. Like your spells are what give you the consistency. Explorer, putting additional lands into play, drawing a card, very good in a deck that wants to play lands and definitely play Field of the Dead. Once Upon a Time, super powerful card, borderline busted. Could possibly see a banning then in the next set of bans that we get in Modern. Can cast it for free if it's your first spell that you cast for the game, and then it looks at the top 5 cards, reveals a creature or land, puts it into your hand, whatever. 42 of your 60 cards in the main deck are creatures and or lands, so you're not very likely to whiff with this card. Like the times that you whiff with this card, you're probably not going to win the game. So take that for what you will. Summoner's Pact, again, just more copies of Titan. Can also get an Azusa or Secure Tribe Scout if you really want to. Really, this is just getting Titans. A lot of times, some of the time, I should say, you'll get a Azusa, and Azusa will help put more lands into play. And with Amulet of Vigor, you can just end up casting a Titan that's in your hand and setting yourself up better for the next turn, getting your mana right to pay for the Summoner's Pact, and then still getting to go off and play another Titan of some sort, or transmuting Teleria West. Any amalgamation of playing lands and either playing big Titan or setting up your next turn to play a Titan or kill your opponent. So that's really the main deck. I think this is basically stock for the most part. I know that there was some Simic Titan decks, but obviously they were relying heavily on Oko. Sure, that they'll probably come back around, but I think if you're just looking to play a deck that has a really powerful plan A, and then also possibly even as powerful, if not more powerful, plan B in playing Field of the Dead, then Amulet Titan is going to be one of those decks to play, especially since with the Oko bannings and things like that, the Urza decks are going to be a lot less popular. People are going to still try to play them, but ultimately they get a lot weaker when you take away Mox Opal and Oko. So with less like counter spells running around, like you can just kind of cast your spells and go off with your opponent not very likely to have interaction on the first few turns of the game, at least not efficient interaction. And even then, you have so much redundancy in the deck with Once Upon a Times and Summoner's Pacts and Teleria West to go get Summoner's Pact, to then go get a Primeval Titan, that you can just really just grind your opponent out of the game if you're not winning the game on turn 3 or turn 4. And going to the sideboard, finally, you have some sweet green creatures that you can get with Summoner's Pact in Tireless Tracker, Reclamation Sage, and Ramanop Excavator. If your opponent's just trying to like Ghost Quarter you out of the game, Excavator just lets you play lands from your graveyard. In conjunction with Azusa, can just create a really powerful engine for you, even if your opponent's blowing up lands. Even lets you play like Tectonic Edges and Ghost Quarters as well from your graveyard. Get back Gemstone Mines that you weren't able to reset. All these like utility-ish lands that don't do a whole lot, uh, obviously being in your graveyard, that end up giving you a ton of value when you're able to play them over and over again, like playing Ghost Quarter against your Tron opponent over and over again, is very, very good. I know from experience. Mystical Dispute is a little bit of interaction to be playing. Like, this tournament did take place when the Urza decks were happening, so maybe Mystical Dispute doesn't make the cut anymore, but not bad for being able to fight against some control decks in a very efficient way. Dismember, good against other Titans, you know, like if they try to block yours, whatever. You can just first strike theirs down, and they can't first strike yours down because they're obviously a lot smaller. Good for getting rid of some problematic creatures that could just totally ruin your game plan. Also, just very efficient for really what it does. Beast Within, catch all to like any permanent. Like, it doesn't matter giving your opponent a 3/3 if you just blow up one of their damping sphere or something like that to essentially press your advantage and push to the final points of damage, to where if they do find another hate card, it's just not going to matter. Going back through these and some of the zeros that you can get with Teleria West, another Engineer Explosive is good against like super aggressive decks. Field of the Dead, when you just need to be way grindier than your opponent. For like the mid range decks, the Mirror, Radiant Fountain, another one that you can get for the burn matchups and things like that. Very powerful. Tectonic Edge, another card that you can just kind of keep getting back with Ramanop Excavator if you need to. Also, just blows up any non-basic land that's in play and doesn't give your opponent a land, which is again very good. Can deal with a lot of creature lands. Can also deal with some other lands that could throw off your mana, like Field of Ruin is another one. Deals with opposing Field of the Deads, Cavern of Souls, things like that. Very, very good card in this deck. And that's going to do it for AmuLIT Titan. Again, this deck is by Matthew Dilks. He basically never loses with this deck. You rarely ever see him do poorly with it. Like, I think the only tournament that I know of that he's done poorly with was the Season 1 Invitational. Aside from that, like, he's just kind of runs people over with AmuLIT Titan. And being as someone who's played this deck before, it's very powerful, very potent. You have those, and B is still very, very powerful and very, very good, and really hard to beat unless your opponent's like trying to storm off or like even infect you with like a blighted agent or something like that. Going forward, I feel like AmuLIT Titan is going to be one of the better decks played in the format. If not one of the better decks to be played, probably one of the most powerful decks being played, with interaction now going down, with the Urza decks essentially being neutered with the previous bannings. So that's going to do it for this deck tech. If you guys enjoyed it and want to see more deck techs on my channel, I'm going to be adding all of them to a playlist that you can see for their respective formats. If you still enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing to my channel. I do a lot of Pioneer and Modern stuff, also a little bit more when it comes to the competitive side of Magic. And I also do some tournament reviews and just my thoughts on like meta games and things like that. Also, consider following my Twitch channel, where we play tons of different games, hang out mostly, and also get into a little bit of Magic as well on there as well. Appreciate you guys for watching the video, and I'll see you on the next one.